So for the final portion of our Section 7 lesson, we're going to take a look at a key speech in Act 1. It's a soliloquy by Lady Macbeth in Act 1, Scene 5. And just to set the stage for us, at this point in the play, Lady Macbeth has learned through the letter that her husband writes her that Macbeth has met the witches and been named Thane of Cawdor. And then she learns that Duncan is traveling to Inverness to her castle that night. And so Lady Macbeth starts thinking, tonight is the night to fulfill the prophecy. Tonight, we will have Duncan in our castle. We can kill him. Okay, so let's take a look at this passage and let's try to interpret it. So Lady Macbeth. One thing we want to notice here is that Lady Macbeth begins speaking after the messenger exits. So this means that she's alone on stage, and therefore we're dealing with a soliloquy, a speech alone on stage. And Lady Macbeth begins with an image of a raven, and she uses a rhetorical device called apostrophe. So let's talk for a second about the raven and apostrophe so we have a better understanding of what's happening. First of all, this is a raven. A raven is a black bird. It's a scavenger, meaning it eats garbage, but traditionally it would have eaten the remains of dead animals. And for these reasons, the raven is associated in many cultures with death. In fact, for a raven to caw, which is the word we use to describe the sound a raven makes, would have been seen as an omen of death in some cultures, right? An omen is a sign that something bad is going to happen. So when Lady Macbeth begins with this imagery of the raven, we should be aware of the cultural meaning of the raven. Secondly, what is an apostrophe? An apostrophe is a rhetorical or literary device when someone addresses or speaks to a non-present person or thing. In other words, we know that Lady Macbeth is alone. It's a soliloquy. But she is going to speak to certain things. She's going to speak to night. She's going to speak to demons. Now, this is a rhetorical device where rather than speaking alone, she's saying, "Oh, demons, help me to do this terrible thing." Right? So it's a specific rhetorical device that gives an impact on the speech. So let's go ahead and let's dive into our interpretation of this important soliloquy now. So Lady Macbeth begins with the image of the raven. She says, "The raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements." This is an extremely important statement. Okay, so the raven is hoarse. The word hoarse describes your voice when you've been talking for too long and it gets very tired. So your voice might sound like this. That's a hoarse voice. So if the raven is hoarse, what does that mean? It means that it has been cawing, or what she says, croaking, making its call many times so that its voice is now hoarse. Now remember, what does it mean for a raven to caw, to make a sound? It means death. So Lady Macbeth is so confident at this point that Duncan will die, that not only does the raven make its call as Duncan enters her castle, but it makes its call so much that its voice is hoarse and tired. Okay, so in this image, through a declarative statement, Lady Macbeth says with great confidence that Duncan will die. So later when we see Macbeth soliloquize saying, "I can't kill Duncan, I'll jump the life to come, he's been clear in his great office," we know, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth have very different ideas about what's going to happen to Duncan, who's going to win out. Here we see how powerful Lady Macbeth is in her conviction, and we're better able to understand why she wins out over her husband and why she convinces him to kill Duncan. So that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Fatal means deadly. Battlements means castle or fortifications, right? Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. So here is an example of apostrophe. Who is she talking to? She uses the second person you to talk to spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. Mortal here, right, along with fatal, they both mean deadly or associated with death. So she's speaking to spirits that tend to deadly thoughts. In other words, she's speaking to what we might call demons. And she's using an apostrophe to speak directly to them and to call them to her. So this is another instance of the supernatural. A director of this play could choose whether to have a spirit appear on stage, perhaps. But even if you don't think that these demons are actually coming to Lady Macbeth, even if you believe that she doesn't even believe that they will, the fact that she's choosing to speak to demons rather than to God clearly aligns Lady Macbeth's motives with amorality and even evil. Okay? And this is very key as well. A theme that Lady Macbeth is going to introduce here relates to a transgressive gender identity, right? She believes, as I think most people living in an Elizabethan worldview, that the female is associated with kindness and the male is associated with cruelty, right? This is like a typical, very simplified view of gender, right? Women are mothers of children, they nourish their children, they give them milk, they're kind. Men need to fight battles and protect their families, they're cruel, right? And perhaps there are some people today who even think along these lines, even if that's probably simplistic and sexist, right? But in any case, we have this kind of dichotomy of maleness and femaleness. But Lady Macbeth doesn't want to be kind like a woman. She wants to lose her female gender, to lose her female sex, so that she can be cruel like a man and make sure that this murder happens. Okay? She says to the spirits, unsex me here, right? So what does she mean by sex? She means sex as in male sex or female sex, right? She wants to lose her womanhood and her femininity, right? She wants to be filled from the crown to the toe, from the head to the toe, her whole body, top full of direst cruelty. Remember, according to this simplified, old-fashioned view of gender, the female would have been associated with kindness and the male with cruelty. So she wants to be cruel. She wants to murder Duncan. So she wants to lose her female sex, and she wants to be filled from the crown to the toe with cruelty. Lady Macbeth continues in her soliloquy to issue commands. And remember, she's still speaking to these spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, to these demons. Right? She's still speaking in an apostrophe. And she's issuing commands as well, right? These aren't declarative sentences. These are commands. She's using the imperative mood here. She's saying, make thick my blood, right? The idea of blood being thick is again associated with cruelty. And by mentioning blood, we're kind of conjuring up the image of cruelty in the mind of the audience, right? What does blood remind us of? It reminds us of violence. Stop up the access and passage to remorse. Remorse means guilt. So what she means is, stop my emotions from feeling guilty so that I can continue to be cruel and make sure that Duncan dies. Lady Macbeth says to stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose, nor keep peace between the effect and it. Let's kind of paint an image of what she means here. So Lady Macbeth is kind of imagining herself holding a dagger, right? About to kill Duncan, right? Now, of course, this is just in her mind. She's not the one who actually kills Duncan. But, here is her purpose. But it is not yet fulfilled, right? And she says she wants no compunctious visitings of nature, right? Compunctious, again, means like feelings of regret or guilt. She doesn't want her kind of natural kindness to interfere with her cruelty. She doesn't want to keep peace between the effect and it, right? So what is it? It is her purpose. What would it mean for peace to come between her purpose and her effect of killing the king? It would mean that she would fail and that her husband would never become king, right? But she wants to make sure that she's able to achieve her purpose, that there is no peace between it, and thus, the dagger can become bloody, as it were, and Duncan can be murdered, and the prophecy can be fulfilled, right? In the next sentence, we have another image that reminds us of kindness versus cruelty. And remember, the bodily fluids, the humors, would have been medically associated with different kinds of emotions in Shakespeare's day. Now, in the 21st century and before, we know that this is silly. A doctor would laugh at this idea. But remember, milk is associated with kindness, and gall is associated with cruelty. Also, milk is associated with the feminine, right? Because it's mothers who produce milk for their babies, right? So she says, "Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall." In other words, I don't want to have milk, I want to have gall. I don't want to be kind, I want to be cruel. Okay? You murdering ministers, wherever in your sightless substances you wait on nature's mischief. Come, thick night, and pall thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, that my keen knife see not the wound it makes, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark to cry, hold, hold. This is another very complicated image that we can try to unpack here. Right? So remember, she has an image here of her keen knife. Keen means sharp. And she wants night to come. She wants the smoke of hell to come. Now, what do smoke and nighttime have in common? Both of these are going to conceal or hide, right? She's afraid that if she can see what she does, she won't do it. If she knows that she'll kill the king and she can imagine the blood, she won't have the courage to do it. So Lady Macbeth wants night to come. She wants the smoke of hell to come to conceal the truth of what she's going to do from her, right? So if we imagine this is the arm holding the knife, this is the king, right? We can imagine like an eye here, right? And we can kind of imagine Lady Macbeth over here. And she wants a cloud of smoke to get between her eye and her plan, right? She wants the night to come to fill the world with darkness so that she's not scared of what she's going to do. Okay, so there's a lot of complex stuff going on in the imagery in this soliloquy, but if we can just review for a second, right? Lady Macbeth begins with an image of a raven, which is an omen of death. She says that the raven keeps croaking until it's hoarse, which symbolizes the fact that Duncan is definitely going to die. In an apostrophe, she addresses supernatural forces, right? She, like the witches, is aligned with the supernatural to an extent. She talks to demons, and she asks to lose her womanhood, to be unsexed, to lose her woman's milk, right? To lose her womanhood, because she knows that in Elizabethan society, womanhood is associated with kindness, right? Whereas manhood would be more associated with cruelty. So she wants to lose her gender so that she can become cruel. She wants to make sure that she's filled with gall, again, with cruelty, and that the smoke of hell and nighttime comes and clouds her vision so that she's unable to see what she's going to do, and she will go through with it. Okay, so lots of imagery, lots of apostrophe. the symbolism of the raven, lots of darkness and evil are conjured up in this soliloquy. And we really see that Lady Macbeth is a ferocious person who is not guided by traditional morality or virtue, and who is very eager for her husband to fulfill the prophecy, even if it means committing a black evil deed, such as killing Duncan as he's a guest in their own house. Okay, so really this passage and the scenes that we've analyzed set the stage for Act 2 when Duncan is murdered. So I'm Edward Dunnigan, partnering with the Bund Education. I look forward to seeing you in our next section when we're going to take a look at Act 2. We're going to provide a synopsis of it scene by scene, an analysis of some of its key moments, and again, analyze in depth one important passage from Act 2. Thank you very much.